Welcome back to episode 11 of the In Our Headspace podcast. We haven't yet, but we're very close to 150 downloads.
You fucking lied to me.
I said I will pull up the text right now.
I feel like you said we hit 150
Jared,
downloads.
all right. Making me pull out the receipts. I see. Let's see.
I threw mine away.
Yeah, you would. Okay, here we go. Today, 9:24 a.m. We're almost at 150 downloads. Your response? We are in the big leagues. Boom. I win. Anyways, Jared and I were just having a conversation right before I introed that, and then it sparked something within me, and I wanted to intro and then talk about it. And now, my brain go blank, and I forget.
I thought you were going to say I could hear the words.
No. What? Okay. Oh, crap. Well, okay, what did you say?
The whole laughing emoji thing, and I related it to, it reminds me of arguing and absolving all responsibility when we say I'm just saying to whatever you said.
Yes.
Okay.
So, the tangent I was going to go off of was when people put themselves in a bad situation or an objectively negative spot for themselves, and the initial reaction is, guys, I messed up, LOL. That way you can try to get them on your side as if like, well, I made a mistake, but I'm being lighthearted about it.
I do it too. That's why we're talking.
Yeah. And then it's like, then you're setting yourself up to be like, the other person's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Just do it again next week. Just do it again next week.
Yes. When in reality, it could be a big deal. But then they're like you were saying with the laughing emojis, like, bruh, I just hit a kid with my car laughing emoji. And then it's like, the other people are like, LMAO, WTF laughing emoji. And then it's like, that's just what my initial thought comes to. And it's like, this is obviously, I'm not intending this to be a blanket statement, but it just, I think that's one of the frustration points of like, when you're not really, when you're texting someone, you're losing a layer of communication. But the point I'm trying to get at is when you're talking with people who are your friends, potentially in quotation marks, there are a lot of people who have friendships out there that are less genuine than I think a healthy relationship would be.
I hate you.
And like, they just start like either enabling each other or like in that situation where not really holding each other accountable. And then I don't know. I don't really know the point I was trying to make, but when you said that, it made me think like, yeah, I feel like there are people who I don't think it's a good reaction to be like, jump into my group chat and just be like, lol, oops, laughing emoji. And then everyone's like, XD, that's funny. That sucks, bro. And then it's like, haha, I'm still alone.
Well, see, okay, this is what I find interesting about it. I don't remember. What is the saying? Like, misery loves company, or whatever the fuck it is.
That is exactly what it is.
And so, usually when I hear that statement, I think of the extreme of some very, very sad person that's lying or manipulating, that like doesn't want to be alone and like lies and manipulates to you still in the moment so you don't leave and shit like that.
Yes.
But I view that this is kind of the same thing, just not as serious, maybe, if you want to put it that way.
Yes.
It's like, it could still be super serious is the thing.
Depending on the context.
Yeah, but like it's completely desensitized because it's not in person.
Yes.
It's over messaging.
Yes.
And then again, to downplay it, you just throw in your emojis.
And the other side, to add on to that, the hard part is then something serious does happen and they don't have someone to go to because it's like, oh, it'd be too awkward to get super real up in here. And then they either bottle that emotion up, put it online, or they message the person they think they're the closest to, which I'd say option C is probably the best, but like when you've trained yourself to not have that like close enough connection with these people, particularly people who are going through school and they have these classmates that are their friends, but like just classmate friends, and then something serious happens or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it's too personal. So it's like, I don't know. I have a personal practitioner, I guess you could say, of like, one of the biggest things that I strive for in a person to person interaction is building a relationship and keeping and maintaining a relationship. And
I don't like ours. I want a new one.
yeah, yeah, let's just restart. Let's restart 5 or 6 years in the past. So, anyways, I just feel like even if it's someone I don't really know, my emotions are at where, say there's someone I want to know, but I haven't been given the opportunity to build a relationship with that person. I have this feeling inside of me of like, man, I want to feel closer with this person. Not in a weird way, but like in a less than surface level way, or a more than surface level way, I should say, where I don't just say, hey, and it's like you move on. It's like, I want to have conversations with this person. I want to share my thoughts. I want to hear their thoughts and then go back and forth. I'd say, and that is very much a personality thing, and it's very much a objective thing. Like, that's my specific perspective. And it's an interesting combination because I consider myself an introvert, but where the exception to that personality trait comes in is I'm also, since I try to be so relationship oriented, when I'm around people I have a good relationship with, I am the opposite of an introvert. And it's fascinating because, and I'm sure this is most introverted people out there, when you have someone close to you, all of that, I don't know, pressure, I guess you could call it, doesn't exist. And even then, like, I'm not so introverted that I'll not talk to people. Like, I've definitely gotten way better at it as I've gotten older. From like when I was 16, I was extremely introverted. And then to now, it's like I keep to myself. I'm not really that insecure when I'm around other people like I used to be. But if I don't have anything to say, I just won't say it. But then if I feel like I have something to contribute, even then I'm like, maybe I just won't say it. But it's never like a negative feeling, how it used to be. But then that flips on its head when I've got this want to build a relationship with a person. It's like all of a sudden I'm extroverted, and then even then, I don't know. I'm kind of in this weird gray zone where when the first couple months you know me, first couple weeks maybe, depending on how often I see them, I'm like super introverted, and then I loosen up, and then it's like, what, you're an introvert kind of thing? Anyways, that's just me.
2 things I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
The first one being, as you were talking about, that's the reason why I don't like shallow relationships. I almost find them pointless.
Yes, me too.
As what you said earlier about, like, you can't have the real conversations with them because you don't know them well enough. It's uncomfortable. They might not care.
Or they might do something with that information.
That too.
Yeah.
Maybe they gossip about you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know I am in relationships right now.
Yep.
With people that are shallow.
Yeah.
Not going to name them because it'd be weird if they listen to this at some point.
We'll just say, it's like I was saying earlier. It's similar to how when you're going to school with somebody and they're your classmate, it's not expected to always be a deep relationship because you're supposed to,
yeah,
you're just classmates. But like, anyways, I was just going to clarify that.
Like, for example, and maybe this is like, whenever I'm talking to someone, when they're trying to have a conversation or something, I typically don't, unless I really don't like them, would leave them on read, for example. It's like, okay, they're trying to talk to me. All right, I'll talk back.
Put a little effort back. Yeah.
And it's just something that always just confused me, and I've just kind of learned to like people are different is how I go about this. Like, because I have good friends that when I talk to them, they won't like because I'll start it off and I'll be like, "How you doing? What have you been up to?" Comment on whatever they said,
Right.
but they won't do anything in return, and they'll just end it there. I was like, "Oh." Then I have other friends, basically like you guys,
Yeah.
where it's like, you guys don't do that.
We just go back and forth until we're both like, all right, that's good.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't need to be like, all right, talk to you later.
Yeah.
Or bye. It's like we have conversation, and then when it reaches its finishing point, it's like cool.
Yeah.
But we're also like almost in constant communication as well.
That's a good point. But like, because I just think it's different. Because there's been times where I'm talking to someone and something is on my mind. Like they'll be the first to approach me and ask me about certain things. Yeah. And then it won't come into mind until later. I was like, oh, I could have kept that conversation going, but I was thinking about whatever else was going on in that day.
Right.
I've done that before where I kind of look back. I was like, oh, I hope they didn't think I was an asshole or anything. Because I kind of cut off the conversation.
Kind of change the subject or whatever.
Yeah. But anyways, going back to the shallow relationships, that's one thing that's irked me with some shallow relationships that I've had. And this is a year ago. Had a lady friend. And super flirty with me and everything. But when it's like she just wanted to keep it at that. I was like, it's just so weird how people
like
are.
Like arm's length almost.
Yes. Yeah. And I just found it very confusing because we did a lot of stuff together in that year. I specifically say that semester. And we do a lot of things together. And then once in a while, like 2 or 3 times, like we'd make plans to do something. She wouldn't follow up at all, ignore me. And then the next day I would poke fun at her because I was like, what you did was an asshole move. So I'd be like, hey, what'd you do on Saturday? And then she'd sit there and think and look down. And then I would be like, and then she would like try to say something really quickly, and then she would it was like she's fabricating a story because she has to sit there and think about what to say.
Right.
And so she would say like half of the sentence, pause, say the other half, pause, and then like she kept repeatedly doing that. And when she did that, when she was like in the second sentence, when she was trying to make it seem like a really good excuse, I just said, oh, it's okay, you don't have to explain yourself. Like,
that's not what I was getting at. I was just trying to call you out.
Yeah, I'm just poking some fun.
Right.
And she actually, I said that like 2 or 3 times. And she kept talking and kept trying to talk about it. I said, it's all right. It's all right. And like, I don't know if she was that deep in thought, try to explain it, or she was panicking, but.
Or it's like a guilt thing.
Yeah. And I just thought it was such a weird relationship to have with someone.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I guess kind of like maybe with what you and Ashley had or whatever at some point. Like, I don't know what it was, but then I stopped talking to her because I was just like, something's not right here, obviously.
Yeah,
and
it's
I don't
not necessarily
like where
a
this
healthy relationship.
I'm just like, this isn't normal. What the fuck's going on?
Yes.
And it would piss me off too, because I don't like what the people that I'm in contact to. I'd say like, again, I don't leave people on read.
Yeah.
And so like Davis will call me, you guys will call me. Like I typically answer. It's like,
and if you don't answer, you're usually back to us within a
like,
good amount of time.
I'm specifically referring to phone calls because that's my main. Like I always answer my phone basically.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I just found it again kind of bothersome because I remember one time she called me. It was like 12 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was just laying in bed and I was like, I wasn't fully asleep, so I just answered. I was like, hello. And she's drunk as fuck.
Oh.
And she's at like some sort of party. And then she asked, "Hey, do you have more alcohol?" And I'm just like,
why would you have alcohol?
and I'm just thinking like, oh, fuck you, asshole.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're calling
You're,
for.
you're just calling because you want something from me.
And then when I repeated it, I said, "Did you just call me for alcohol?" She's like, "No."
No,
I was like,
but do you?
yeah, I'm just thinking, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's lame.
I guess a little personal, weird interaction with someone. But then I have other ones that are not like that.
Yeah.
Where it's just, you ask them a question, they open and they don't respond. And then you see them later. It's like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
And then it just ends there. Which and stuff like that, I'm not a fan of.
Right.
Because it's completely different when talking to someone to have deep, meaningful conversations. And I want to talk about a certain someone, but they might hear this.
Okay. Is it possible to keep it anonymous, or is it super obvious when you start talking about it?
It's going to be obvious because if they're smart enough, they will put the pieces together and they'll be like,
so
that's me.
So we'll just, for the sake of other people, we'll just not do it.
Okay. Yeah.
We could talk about it personally.
Yeah. We'll talk about it off air.
I
had a second part.
Okay. You got a second part and then I'll get my input.
So this is going back to people having these weird ass facades and acting shallow. Like, I'm not completely blaming her for the way she acted. Okay. I understand people have habits.
Yes.
People act out of habit. What I say and react to a lot of things is out of habit because I've been reacting and doing things that way. Like it would take a lot for someone to internally change, like genuinely change.
Oh yeah.
How they are. And so that's why I don't want to fully just be like, oh, like I understand that.
It's not like putting other people down, but it also means
I'm more putting it towards, the type of and this, I could still blame them and talk about personal responsibility, but I'm not.
Right.
I'm just talking about, because she'd show me I know the type of people she hung out with, and it's almost like expected that they acted that way. Honestly, kind of like the stereotypical frat boy for the
college people in general. Yeah, yes, for sure.
And so
young people in general. I should say.
It's definitely the first time for me personally experiencing like that, because the people I communicate with, it's like I personally know them and known them for quite some time, and when I talk to them, it's conversation, natural conversation, not And so it was the first time again last year
that you've had an experience with someone being
just not knowing them at all, and then that's how they treated me. So it was my first time experiencing that. And I'm not just going to sit here and call them an asshole. I could, but I understand that that's just what they're growing up with. And again, I think there's an argument for personal responsibility and saying you should have the foresight or whatever to not do that. But what I wanted to talk about, because I know I've been rambling, was the second part and how people have these personas, these facades.
Yep.
What I found so interesting, because I'm talking to Cody about it, he got a VR headset recently.
Yeah.
And he's been playing VR chat.
Really?
Yes.
That's funny.
And I was thinking, me and Cameron talk about, it's like, oh yeah, it seems something fun to mess around with. But what I find so crazy when looking at that, so obviously one of the beauties, and you could call it the downsides too, of the internet is your anonymity. You're anonymous. People don't know you. People don't see you.
Yes.
The only time you're ever going to talk to these people, if you ever see them again,
is going to be online.
Yeah, through whatever means you're talking to them online.
Right.
And what I find so interesting about VR chat, so people talk about this is the loneliest generation.
Yeah.
But we're the most connected ever, and all this crazy technology we have.
Right.
And what I found interesting, watching some videos on VR chat, and then Cody talking about his experiences, when people are playing that game, now there's some people that are just role playing and whatnot and having fun their way.
Yes.
But from other stuff that I've seen, like people are there to have like actual conversations and
It's like an online hangout thing.
yes. And what I just find like, I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just how I'm thinking about it. It's
Mhm.
crazy that going back, loneliest generation being labeled,
Yeah.
people wanting to talk to others, and we're more connected now than ever, but we just don't.
Yeah.
I think through social media, through what's popular, really clouds a lot of people's judgment.
Okay.
And so when you have this avatar that physically does not represent you
Yes.
and no one knows who you are,
Yes.
you're just like, oh, I can act more like me now. And
right.
so
Okay.
next thing you know, you start congregating with other people that in real life, you may never talk to them. You might scoff at them. You might not even like them.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get rid of all these weird social barriers we've
Yeah.
unconsciously put up,
Yeah.
it's just like next thing you know, you're sitting there having a great time talking to people in a big ass group, enjoying each other's time, waiting for someone to finish speaking and then you speak.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why can't we just do that in real life?
That is a really good point because I feel like there's way too much judgment passed around, subconsciously or not.
I'm guilty of it too. I just want to point that out.
I feel like everybody judges.
Yes.
But everyone has subconscious thoughts about other people. I think what matters is whether or not you act on it and whether or not you let it influence your decisions. And I think over time, I feel like I've become more and more aware of like how I think towards other people and then how I choose to respond to that. And I think like it's really cool. I think I said this a couple episodes ago. I feel like empathy is fairly lacking for no other reason than, like you were saying, people put up walls and they choose not to empathize for other people. But I think once you start empathizing and putting yourself in other people's shoes or seeing it from their perspective, and you just talk objectively, you can really connect with people whether or not you have the same or not beliefs. And you start really understanding the other person. And the goal isn't to try to change someone's mind, it's trying to understand other people. And I think, and I talked about this in my solo episode, where I think it's everybody wants to understand the other person, but being given so many tools to like push away or block people or put up these barriers or avoid things, it's so easy to just disregard people and take our social, I guess, privileges, if you will, like our ability, like you're saying, our generation is so much more capable of being socially interactive with everybody all around the world. And I think we take that for granted to the point where it's like, I'm going to pick and choose who I want to see and talk to. And I'm going to judge you if you have this specific thing about you.
That's what I want to say is the beauty of that, or that's the ugly side. Like the beauty of it is saying that idea, like you could talk to anyone in the world just like that. You could send them pictures just like that. And I would say, going back to what you're saying, like the ugly part then is when you create whatever biases, whatever you want in your head. You're like, okay, I have the freedom to do it. Now, as we develop it more, it's like, okay, I'm going to stigmatize now. I think that's a good way to put it. And it's like, okay, I don't want to talk to people that are like this. I'm not interested in people like this. And we talked about this before, kind of develops then into some Disney princess thing where it's just like, oh, I'm going to pick and choose what I want. But the issue, like, you can obviously want things. I'm not saying that, but it's just going back, like, how the hell are you going to want some sort of Prince Charming when you're not even a princess yourself type of deal?
Yeah. Like people, like you were saying, it's an avoidance of accountability. And I think what's interesting is based on the things that make me tick, like my insecurities and my confidence in things and like everything, like all the negative and positive things that drive me. I have this like internal desire to never burn a bridge and to keep as many relationships as I can a positive thing. Whether or not I was like had a good or bad relationship with someone in high school or even barely a relationship, I still try to be as if I'm their friend. Not in a fake way, but like treat them with the same respect I treat my friends and my family and stuff. Like I try to treat everyone with like a good amount of respect. And I think I've only had one relationship that's ever like one friendship that's ever like been, I guess, damaged. And like it's the easy route, like you were saying, it's the easy route to be like, oh well, it's the other person's fault because of all of these things, and this chain of events is what caused it, and I was simply reacting to the way they treated me. When in retrospect and after thinking about things, it's like with that specific relationship, I fully recognize that like I helped ruin it too. Like I was really bad about communication. All my insecurities got in the way, all of this. And it actually is like reassuring to myself to be like, okay, it wasn't just some force of fate that caused this to go wrong. It was like, it was partly my fault, partly their fault. And it's like, no regret. No, it's like, I'm almost at peace with like, it feels good that I have now grown past that. And it feels good that because of this experience, communication and effective communication is one of my highest held, like, I'm not trying to say it's my highest held value. It's like the thing I want the most out of every relationship is good communication. And I feel like everything that went wrong in the one bad relationship I've had was due to communication. And I think that's what's caused me to have this shift in mindset where I feel like you need to communicate with the other person, not necessarily about everything, but you need to, because if you don't communicate something, then you give someone a detail without, or sorry, someone a, I guess, occurrence or event or something that happened without any details. All the details that you left out are now left to be made up in the other person's head as to why something happened.
Yeah.
And then you don't know. And then this person, that happens once, and then it happens twice, and then it happens 10 times, and it happens 20 times. And then all of a sudden they have this morphed image, morphed perception of you. And you've not given them any details and they've not given you any details. And now you guys have these like skewed perceptions of each other where all it really takes is sharing your perspective and being like, well, in this situation, this is how I felt. And I did this because of this reason. And it's like, oh, okay, I thought you did it for this reason. Well, I did this because of this and that. And then it's like, oh, so we really, it's like when you're arguing with someone and then by the end of it, you're like, oh, wait, we agree. So I don't know. That's why I think communication is so crucial.
I 100% agree with communication because I've, over this coronavirus quarantine, I've actually burnt my first bridge with someone.
Really?
Yeah. I wish I didn't, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
Because who wants a bad ending?
Exactly. That's exactly what I meant.
That's how I feel about, and it's just like, now that's what happened. So this person I was in contact with, talked to daily, in March when Corona hit and my schooling went fully online.
Yeah.
I checked out from talking to this person.
Okay. I
had reasons to, this goes back to communication.
Yeah.
And so the reasons I didn't really want to keep talking was because they were making a mistake and they kept making it. But I didn't want to point it out because I've done this before where I've pointed out other people's mistakes, but they don't want to take responsibility for it, and it just makes anger. And then it's just like
defensive. And
yes.
Yep.
And then now it's in a weird state where like for like a couple days or a week, it's awkward. It's like, oh, you know, I was weird.
Yeah.
And so they would it was frequently, and then it was, we'll just say often, then they would make this mistake. And it was very annoying because I didn't want to say anything about it.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge difference there's something different when someone internally owns up to it and acts on it, takes responsibility for it.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, like, I don't know, like, I can't point out someone's mistake and coerce in a way to make them be like, oh, I'll own up to it. Like, that never seems to be the case.
I'll say something to you when you finish your thought, because I think I have something that may
all right
have insight on that.
And so what really bothered me then and so then I stopped talking to them over COVID. And then I think towards the end of October, I get a text from them
Been in that boat, Jared.
Asking for something for reasons. And I said, okay, like I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Did stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, basically, they tried to scam me.
Whoa.
Out of money.
Whoa.
Quite a bit of money. This has nothing to do with getting someone pregnant, by the way. If that's what you're thinking.
No, yeah, I don't think that. Trust me, I don't think that.
They tried to scam me out of $3,700. Might be 4,000, but anyways, when we didn't talk for that whole time, and it I could have done something to make it sure that the path didn't lead here.
Yes.
But my inability to action here is what led us to this path.
Yeah.
And so when I didn't talk to this person for months, and then I get the text asking for stuff, provided false information, and when I actually looked into it, I was like, oh wow. And like we had this shared account, okay, that had stuff on it, and they had the login information to get onto the website, but they didn't have the login information to get into the email.
And
so
is that what they're asking for?
Well, so they worded it as in, hey, there's like a deadline for something, and like, let me take care of it, blah blah blah, like,
so you don't have to worry about it.
Yes. And so then this is like, it was like 6 a.m. And so when I woke up from my phone notification, I had like this surge of adrenaline, and I like got the fuck up and I went straight to my computer to check out what was going on. I was just like, I was pissed. First of all, I was like, Jesus Christ.
Before you knew anything?
Yes.
Or was it just a hunch you had, or was it something that triggered that?
It's just the context of the text was not a good one.
Okay, I got you.
And so I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Because I'm worrying about like, I'm like, God, I gotta like take some tests soon. I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta fucking deal with this.
Yeah, added stress.
And so I get the fuck up and I go to my computer and I start reading stuff, and it's like, it made me just disappointed that
this person would act this way.
Yes, but like they did it through a kind of a FOMO-ish, a fear of missing out. They tried to instill fear and a sense of urgency that this needed to be done now. And so they lied about a date for something, creating an urgent sense of very urgent. Okay. Very urgent.
Yes.
Saying, hey,
Very
this
time
needs to be done
sensitive.
like ASAP. So like, let me handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's through trading, I have developed very thick skin because I remember when I experienced the fear of missing out. Like,
Oh yeah.
that shit, like, that's crack. I'm not even fucking kidding. You don't want anything to do with it because it's not you acting in the moment. You're acting so irrational.
Yeah.
When you have some sort of fear, like just fear in general, whatever, like an insecurity of some sort, like literally anything.
A desire to prove something.
Yes. Like,
yeah.
In that moment, that distorts your normal cognitive thinking so much. And then like 5 minutes pass by and you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's literally like post-nut clarity.
No more into that.
But so anyways, when I did research and because I this is important and I needed the exact details.
Yeah.
And when they created that, like the sense of urgency, like it got me the fuck up out of bed and immediately went to my computer. But that was the extent of it. It wasn't, oh my God, like, okay, I'll give you everything.
Yeah, you win.
Yeah. And so when I looked into it and everything, I was like, okay. And so then I just said, I'll take care of it. And then it was like, oh, okay. That was the last time we talked, again, end of October. And so then on Proton Mail, which is the email for this one, it actually tells you when people try to log into the account.
Oh my God. Was it a bunch of attempts?
And so I just look, I was like, oh, they assumed that the login information for the website was the same for
oh my God.
the email, which I obviously intentionally made different.
Oh, you genius.
And so then that was the Proton Mail notification.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw a failed notification for withdrawal of money because they couldn't get into the email. And so then when I found this out, that they only asked me because they tried to do it without asking me.
Yes, they tried to go behind your back, realized they couldn't.
And so then they resorted to making it seem nice. Hey, it's been a while. Let me talk to you. And I was like, what the fuck?
That's the first thing you do when you try to get back in contact.
So I'm just thinking, like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah.
And so then that's when it like really triggered me that they tried to instill. They tried to make me feel a fear.
Oh yeah, put you in a state of urgency, so you will act irrationally.
Yeah, so I would act irrationally and would have made a mistake.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't do that. But anyways, the whole point was like, this is where burning a bridge led to.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, what a fucking mess this turned out to be. Like, and so looking back on it, I'm just like, I don't want to burn any more bridges,
dude. So I think it's so hard when you burn a bridge with somebody because it takes double the effort to bring that back. And most of the time it's not worth the effort. And what's hard is like, from my experiences, so it's almost not opposite of yours. It's very different from yours, but it's this feeling of, during the time that I had to represent myself in front of this person, I don't feel like I was ever me. Like, I never felt like I represented myself. And that's why I have now burned that bridge, because
I just want to this is like, I think what you're saying is really good.
Yes.
Just like completely different from my experience.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm basically discussing like burning bridges can have effect on every single type of relationship is basically what I'm getting at. And basically it's like the way you communicate with somebody, the way the amount you choose to share with somebody about yourself or about what you do, or even like, I know the feeling of being, I guess, fake, quote unquote. Like, I never intentionally was fake, but I never was myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was like, it's really hard to look back on a friendship lost
Mm-hmm.
due to your own mistakes.
Yeah.
Combined with the other person's mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking all the blame here, but I'm not placing all the blame either. It's just hard when it's like, dang it. That could have easily, it's one of those, like, in retrospects, like, if I knew now, or if I knew then when I know now, I would act a completely different person.
Yeah.
And I would actually keep in contact. I think the worst part is, like, it's the one bridge I feel like I've burned, where I wouldn't consider going out of contact with someone burning a bridge. Like, if I don't talk to people often, but then every now and then I keep in contact, or I never keep in contact, that's still not a burnt bridge. It's like, a burnt bridge is like, I can't talk to this person anymore, due to whatever.
Well, that's what bothers me so much. Like, it wasn't that. See, this is like whereas ours is different. Like,
Yeah.
I was acting myself, but like,
Right.
just like the one, like in a relationship, when your partner's bothering you, you say something about, like, you got to address it.
Oh yeah.
And that's
part of the
yeah, that's
communication.
not what I did. I did not address the problem that has been going.
Right.
That went on for a very long time. I never addressed it.
Right.
And so then,
And that's how a lot of bridges are burned.
yeah, and like, because I was worried about addressing, because I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like, because I remember I would lightly say something about it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was deflected very easily was the issue.
Yes. And
I didn't want to push it. Like, looking back on it, yeah, like, I would have rather pushed it than have where it ended up right now.
yes,
Is the fucking like,
the hard part about that situation is you can get in your own head, or the other person can make you feel like you are being irrational or you are being rude or insensitive. But at the end of the day, when you're acting that way, you're acting that way because you care about the relationship and you
Yes.
care about where it's going.
yes,
And it all comes from a place of wanting to get to a better place.
Yeah.
But the hard part is when you're stuck in all of those emotions, it's extremely difficult to see it as anything other than accusative. Or if you're not getting accusative and you're like in your situation where you're choosing not to act that way, you can be feeling guilt towards even wanting to bring it up based on the way this person has reacted in the past. And it that is extremely damaging in communication as well, because if someone gets mad at me for something, my reaction shouldn't be get extremely defensive and start insulting them back.
mm-hmm.
I will admit I get defensive to a point. I get defensive to where I try to explain myself, explain why I did something. But then beyond that, that's where it stays. And then every clash has this like explosive emotional part where people are just like flustered and they're just trying to express the way they feel and they're just throwing it at you.
Yeah.
And the other person will say, for example, in this case, me, my response to someone exploding with emotion is to then not like shut up, but like listen to the things they're telling me, whether they be accusatory or not, and then be like, well, it's because of this, or I did this because of this reason, or well, I thought this and I thought that, which maybe it's not so good of a response. I think the legit proper response would be wait and listen and communicate. But I fully empathize with the fact that it is incredibly hard to keep a cool head when you have a lot of emotion going through you.
Yeah, like, it's funny that you say it that way. Like, what you just said is like, where you said it's like, oh yeah, I know, I messed up because of this, blah blah. Like, where you said it might not be the best way to address it, because whenever they'd make this mistake, they would acknowledge. They're like, oh man, I screwed up.
Right.
I screwed up. Shoot. I'm gonna work it out or whatever. but then
I'll work on it. And then it doesn't
nothing
happen.
happened for a very long time.
So, and what I was going to tell you is I think from the way I feel and the perception I have of myself, which generally is biased one way or the other,
I'm perfect.
I feel like I know how to communicate my frustration with other people, but depending on the context of the situation, I will have a hard time receiving that information. I don't shut it out and I don't accuse people. Like, I don't feel like I'm that way. The problem is it still gets me worked up and defensive. But over the years, I've learned to come at peace with the fact that I make mistakes. So it's like, yes, I get defensive at first and then I acknowledge it and then I'm fine. Like, I really dislike the reaction of insulting back. Like, that I am very much in disagreement with. But what I'm getting at is the thing that I've learned about communicating with someone else, something that's frustrating, and this is what I was trying to inform you of, is people hate being told they're wrong. Even if they acknowledge, okay, I screwed up, they don't want to be told again, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You messed this up. You need to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Because all that's going to do is close them up even more. And I think the key to having effective communication with people, at least from the perspective of trying to confront somebody, is, and like I said before, I hate confrontation. And I think this is why I learned this skill. And it's, you need to validate someone's decision. Granted, could be different depending on how bad of a thing they did. But even then, it's like you need to get the person in a state of mind where they don't hate themselves, where they don't feel extreme guilt.
Yeah.
You need to be like, listen, this is not okay. Shouldn't do this. I understand you were trying to do this thing and there's no real way to have any repercussion for this, but I want you to know that it makes me feel this way. And I would like it if you worked on that. Like, that's just a way I would put it personally. Obviously, it's going to be different from person to person, but I think the key there is letting them know that you understand that their intention, and maybe they had ill intention, and be like, well, did you mean it for this way? Because I received this as this.
Yeah.
Or to me, it seemed like you're acting this way.
Or,
so,
see, like, they weren't doing it on purpose. I know that for a fact. They
Right.
were not doing it on purpose. And so that's like it. The issue was like, again, they would like half acknowledge the mistake, but as you said, I think it would have brought in more impact if I then be like, oh, it affected me this way.
mm-hmm.
And then when it goes on for so long, it then turns into like, it's like, I don't want to touch it. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I just kind of like,
It becomes exhausting.
and it's kind of a reason why it's like, I don't want to talk anymore.
And obviously,
so
like you
stopped
said, this was
talking.
like over a long period of time of recurrent,
Over a year.
reoccurring
Over a year.
things. So it's like, I definitely can relate to that, because like, that's just like, you run into the same problem over and over and you say something every time. And then it's like, screw it. And I think maybe you caught that vibe from me, let's say 9 months ago, based on where I was in my life at the time. And there was a certain conflict, I guess you could say, that was in my life.
I'm kind of drawing a blank. I'm thinking, is this when you had the job?
No, it's before I lived here. That's your hint. And I got beyond the point of trying to fix the problem.
I got it.
Because every time I tried, I'd be snuffed out. And so I can relate to that, and I understand that. And honestly, it's same for me. It'd been over a year. Like, it was this whole thing. At that point, I was like, I can only look out for myself. So
to be fair,
so
though,
I
it's
made
probably
plans.
a good thing that this entity's not in your life.
No, yeah, it's a good thing that I'm past that situation. But what I'm getting at is, based on the amount of times that like I ran into the same issue every single time.
Yeah. Well, I would say it got worse over time.
Okay.
From what?
For me?
No,
for you.
No. For you, from the stories you told me,
yes.
where they got progressively worse.
Yes, and it became increasingly frustrating. But my point of detachment was, I'm going to watch out for myself. I'm going to make my own plan. I'm going to make sure I'm okay.
That's what I did.
And this person can just keep living the life I've tried so many times. But I think the messed up part is like, for me, maybe same as for you, it was so hard for me to just say something, right? Like it was so hard for me to put my foot down and be like, this is the problem. I only did it once based on one occurrence that happened.
Yeah.
I'll not get into that. But, and this, by the way, this thing I'm talking about now is not the same as the thing I was talking about for my example before. This is a new example. This is more akin to your example, Jared.
God.
But I think it's hard because there's two different thoughts on this, and it's communicating and connecting with people, but it's also keeping your boundaries and drawing lines in the sand so you don't get manipulated.
Yeah.
And it's super, super important to have your boundaries established, because then that directly correlates with the way you communicate with this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to my very first example, I think the problem I had was I didn't have, so it was ironic. I didn't have boundaries for myself due to a lack of self-confidence, which made me more guarded, which technically you could say I put more boundaries / walls up in front of myself.
That's one barrier that I had because this person is older than me.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's in a sense of a seniority type of deal where it's just like,
right.
So I don't really want to point it out.
But at the same time, it's like you got to have.
Oh, yeah.
You got to give yourself some credit.
I'm so bad at that.
And I was that way for a very long time. And there's another line to be drawn between giving yourself credit and being arrogant or being too, like, wearing too big of boots, if you will. Like, you've got to, like,
yeah.
And I think that's why self-reflection and like thinking inward is an extremely important thing to practice, because it's like you need to be self-aware. You need to be aware of the things you're doing, saying, and how they affect the people around you. I feel like that's just something that everybody should have, is know how you as a being in existence affects the other things around you, whether they be people, animals, objects, economy, anything. Like, you need to know where you fit and how what you do affects the things around you, because the problem begins when you make a decision or do a thing and you're like, oh, I didn't know that it was gonna hurt you this way. I didn't know it was gonna cause this reaction. And I think that was my problem, was I didn't give myself credit. I hated confrontation. I was so insecure. I never acted the way I actually act, which 2.5 years down the line creates really big problems when it's like you've boxed yourself in and you can't act a certain way or you can't say the things. And at that point, it becomes just the way you are and it becomes your life. And then all of a sudden it blows up as all things do eventually. And sorry, I gotta clear my throat. And then you're left feeling like, how dare they?
Yeah.
But like in reality, it's like I could have done so much more to help myself. And like I said before, it's none of this feeling, all of this comes from self-reflection. All of this comes from thinking back on my past experiences, and it's never with regret. It's merely with observation and being like, man, I don't like the way I used to act. I don't like the way I used to think. And now that I'm past that,
yeah, it's
like I feel good that I'm past it, but it sucks that I wouldn't. The weird, I guess, loop of it is I wouldn't have the feelings I have now, and I wouldn't be in the place in life that I am now without going through that experience. And I talked about this in the change, is my solo one, where even the bad things in my life when I was younger, I wouldn't be where I am now without it. So I need to appreciate the fact that they happened regardless of whether or not I liked it.
Yeah.
And I need to be grateful for the bad experiences in life that I've had that have shaped me into where I am now. And I think the most not painful, it's not painful. The thing that sucks the most, since I feel like I'm a very relationship oriented person, is having that like blemish, I guess, like not that sounds so bad. Having that one burnt bridge that's like I could have prevented that, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sucks because it's like I feel like I've kept up with everybody, or like everything else except for this one.
Yeah, like what I found painful about it, like before all of the shit hit the wall type of deal, beautiful relationship. Like it's like God, this it was the type of thing where like it's definitely one of the relationships where like if it sailed the course, it was definitely going to be a lifetime relationship to have with someone. And I'm just like fuck, like, and it's easy to blow things out of proportion in the moment, and downplay things in the future, which is something that I don't like to do because I understand the dangers of doing that. That could be very, very bad if you focus so much on the now and don't really
It'll
look
warp
forward.
your perception.
Yeah, and it really affects your decision making, in my opinion.
Yes.
When you try to act what's best now rather than what's best for the future for yourself.
Right. And
that's where like all the stuff we were doing in the moment was great, but when I look at like what it could have been even more in the future, it's like who gives a shit now that I was like, think about all the stuff that I could have done.
The opportunity cost.
Yes, the opportunity that I could potentially have had with this person. It's like, now that's out the window.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want, like, it's not the end of the world. I've met other people now.
And there's a chance it could resolve itself in years' time.
Potentially.
But it depends on the effort.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that relationship I have is ever getting revived, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. And for good reason.
Yeah, and it's just more like, it was just more of a, like the officials, like, all right, this is where our roads crossed a while ago, but it's like, there's the seal of approval there.
Yep.
It's
official now.
Yeah. And so it's just like, I was going to add something way back earlier, but yeah, screw that.
I'd say where mine differs there is, I feel like mine was only briefly a net positive.
Yeah.
I feel like the relationship that I'm referring to was pretty much doomed to fail because of the way I acted and the way the other person acted. And I think that just goes to show, like, you can have a relationship like yours where years long and it gets messed up as an accumulation of all these things.
Yep.
Or you could have a relationship that's not even that good, not a very healthy, strong relationship for a majority of its existence.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just like, you got to face reality. Like, and I think that's why if you're in a relationship that feels like that, if you're in a relationship where you don't feel like you can communicate with this person, I'd say just go for it. Like, try to communicate with this person.
Yeah.
And I think it'll open your eyes to whether or not you even want to continue a relationship with this person.
What I was going to add, because it just reminded me, like the uncomfortableness and the fear of the unknown of speaking up, like that fear or that grief or whatever you want to call it, like the fear of me saying that, I would say, is like so minuscule to like what it is now.
Oh yeah,
And so that's
it's
why,
temporary.
yeah. And so now, again, looking back, it's just like I should have done something to break that loop, because that little minor inconvenience is nothing compared
To
now where it ended up being. And it's just like, it's just a Jesus Christ, you know?
Yeah, and that's one of
And
the big things I learned too.
yeah. And it would have, and it, like, I should have said something, because if the person didn't want to change, it's been like, well, there's the sign, you know. It's just like,
Yeah.
this isn't going to go anywhere.
Yeah. And the thing is that's something you learn. You've learned that lesson now. And like you
Yeah.
said, that's not going to happen again. And
Yeah,
just like with my situation, I had a very specific situation and I was like, I'm not letting this happen again. And that's probably why I feel the way I do today. And that's probably why I'm at where I am, because it's just like, if you don't, it goes back to that thing I keep bringing up. It's about having control of your life. If you're letting the other person control the pace or your emotion or anything like that, if you need to speak up and say something, no matter the consequence, speak up and say something. Granted, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Also, stick up for yourself, give yourself some credit, and like, if something needs to be said and you feel genuine fear of saying it,
There's a
good chance you should say it, because either you're not in a good relationship or you don't have enough self-esteem to really put yourself like, here's the thing. Humans are innately selfish, and I think that's for a good reason.
Okay.
And you need to put yourself, your health, above the fear of being judged.
I was gonna get philosophical, but for simplicity, yeah, I'll go along.
Sake of time as well. We're close.
Okay. Then I think this might be a good little question to leave off then.
Ooh.
So as you and I just talked about the unfortunate endings of burning bridges.
Yep.
And you know, maybe in some circumstances, like maybe it was a good thing someone burned a bridge, like, oh no, I don't have to deal with that. Like maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But at least in my situation, it could have been something great, but it didn't turn out that way, and instead turned into something very ugly.
Right.
And so I've always thought about this question, and I've asked my religious friends, and they all answer the same. And there's a lot of arguments for this, and the question's simple, but the question was, who's more wise, the man who sinned or the man who didn't?
Well,
I'm not asking you to answer it.
I know. I'm just thinking about it. That's
okay.
kind of like I don't even have an answer. That's the thing. I think that's why I said, whoa. It's just one of those questions. Yeah.
Because it just kind of reminds me I don't think many people go out of their way to burn a bridge.
No. Most of the time, if someone wants a relationship to end, they'll actively end it. It's not a matter of watching a relationship slowly wither away and die because of the decision making. But
after I've made this mistake, I can sure as hell say I've learned quite a lesson here.
Oh yeah. And I think this is something I'm very, very much in belief in. And it's like, it's not worth it to try to, like, I don't even know how to word this, but it's not worth it to try and do one of two things. Either keep the relationship going, keep a dead relationship alive. It's not worth the stress and the emotional drain and the effort to make something that's not there. And the other thing is, it's not worth it to cut people out of your life. Because, in my opinion, every relationship is extremely valuable, and it's one of the very rare things that we get to even enjoy as humans in this era. And like we said at the beginning of the episode, it's taken for granted the amount of relationships we have the opportunity to build. Most of the time we're pushing people away and not really letting anybody in. And it's so crucial to at least appreciate the relationships you still have, because if you burn a bridge, that's like killing the relationship and it's not coming back. And it sucks to have to face the reality that it's not coming back. And it's like the only reason it would is if you communicate. But usually when you burn a bridge, that communication is gone. And for whatever justified reason there is, regardless, my point still stands. It's, I don't know, sucks. So, anyways, it's funny. I had a different topic in mind, but I really like this one more. Maybe we'll talk about the other one I had in mind later. Not later, but on the next episode. So, yeah. That was episode 11. This is one of our more passionate ones. I liked it. So, you have any thoughts before I?
My closing statements was the question.
Okay, fair enough. So, if you are listening on iTunes, leave a rating, please. Not a review. Last time I said review. Leave a rating, 1 to 5 stars, whatever. That helps when people just look at it at a glance.
Here, I'll say this.
Yeah.
The question I asked was intended also for the audience.
Yes.
And so, in YouTube, it'd be fun if they left a
Yes.
comment explaining
what
they
your
thought.
thoughts on. Would you repeat the question?
who is more wise, the man who sinned or the man who did not.
Okay. So, think about it. Chew on it. I hate that expression. That gives me like such gross visuals.
I've never heard of that.
Anyways, leave a comment of your answer, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook even, or
This is
anywhere.
anything.
Anywhere you can leave a comment for us to see. And just like, I don't know. I'll probably talk about my thoughts on it next week. And if someone has a good response, there's a chance I could read it out.
Yeah, that'll be fun because
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I think too.
Yeah.
We'll follow up. We'll follow up with it.
We'll give our answers. If you want, leave a comment. We'll read those answers off on the next episode. And yeah, so we're on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. So go ahead and follow us wherever you feel comfortable following us. We post every Friday. And yeah. So thanks for listening. And bye-bye.